They claim that $40 million a year and less is a small business. So we look at $1 million months, secondly, 12 mil a year. It's still a small, negligible amount of money in the grand scheme of things for what?
There's very few people that I believe see marketing as an art, and you're definitely one of them.
There's like this whole half of the earth now that's just like, oh, rich people are the devil, rich people are evil. And it's the exact opposite. Rich people are the literal nicest people I've ever known. Like I said, if you treat yourself like a computer and you just need a simple software update, that's what new information does. Everybody virtue signals about money. Everybody acts like they do things for reasons other than money.
Who the hell are you to crack $1 million a month?
I saw that number and I was like, that's a couple $100,000 a month.
Welcome everybody to the Producer Mindset podcast. This one is special for me because there's very few times when I have somebody that I watch on YouTube, somebody that I'm watching online that I actually resonate with. And then when you have somebody that in the first 30 seconds of their video says, who the hell are you to crack $1 million a month? So I've been watching all of your content for the last probably 5 months, maybe going on to 6 months.
Nice.
And I just dove in, immediately. I remember this was like 5 months ago. I had dove into a video where you were talking about how to improve your show up rates. And I was like, well, you gotta hammer them. And immediately I said, okay, Chris, we're in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time. I said, you gotta stop. We gotta create some videos so we can hammer them. What the fuck are we doing? And immediately, we rip 12 videos, implement them. And that's been my biggest thing, because I feel like the people that you speak to are people that are going to either take action or just pat themselves on the back for not doing so, But that's been my story with you, and I can't tell you exactly to a pin drop amount of money that you've probably made me just from watching your content, your free content online. So thank you.
Of course, man.
And thank you for doing this podcast here with us today.
Happy to help.
Typically, whenever I have any guests on this podcast, I ask them one day you were born and the next thing you know, you're here in this chair. How did you go from whoever was Jeremy Haynes was then to then this guy that's telling people that they need to crack $1 million a month?
Yeah, I think it's so important. Getting richer is my core message. And when you look at it, according to the U.S. government, they claim that $40 million a year and less is a small business. So we look at $1 million months, secondly, 12 mil a year. It's still a small, negligible amount of money in the grand scheme of things for what a medium size or a large enterprise level business can produce. Small businesses, one of my clients, her name's Cody. She teaches people how to buy businesses, and she has this stat that she taught me where she was like, back in the 1800s, like the Wild West days, I think it was over 70+% or 80+%, some number like that. Look it up. That we were all small business owners back in the day, and now that number's like sub 6%. The way to generate wealth can happen through employment, but I think it typically happens through business. And nowadays, with everything that we have in resources available to us with the internet, all this AI tech, I don't think it's easier than ever before, but I think that we're more capable than ever before. The mindset behind why you need so much more money is so important. It's that entire message of getting richer. And I'll tell you point blank, I realized that nobody out there was advocating for why money matters a ton. Everybody virtue signals about money. Everybody acts like they do things for reasons other than money. Everybody acts like the decisions that they make are controlled by them instead of their actual bank balances in real time controlling those same decisions. And I was just tired of I don't really know how to describe it other than just kind of like surface level, fucking virtue signaling that I felt like other people were doing. I looked at what actually moved the needle for me and for my clients over the years consistently, and going big was consistently that answer. Going much bigger than what was normally talked about just seemed foundational to everybody's lives who are truly getting some serious fucking cash. And when I looked out there in the world, I realized nobody's really talking about getting serious money. You see it occasionally from the people who make like real sums of cash. Like you can go online and watch Elon Musk talk. You can go online, you can watch some Bezos talks. You can see Zuckerberg talks. But I don't know, there's so many steps in between where those people are and where most people are. $1 million a month, I think, is an appropriate step that all people who are running serious businesses who understand why they need to get richer should strive to take. And nobody out there advocates for that. Nobody champions that message. And so I stepped into that role because I understand its importance,
I think that's what resonated with me. It was no one, everybody is, to your point, that everybody's virtual signaling to, you got to have a greater why, a greater cost. And sometimes you just need the money or you just want the money.
That dictates every decision you make.
One of the things I became okay with was being okay with wanting what you want.
Fuck yeah.
And
you got to be very selfish and aligned to what you actually want. Reasons are some of the most important things you could possibly tap into. You ever heard of Jim Rohn?
Yes, of course.
Jim Rohn has an incredible talk. It's 4 hours long, or there's a 2 hour long version of that same talk. It was out in Anaheim in 1981. And this is the first place that I heard about how important reasons were. He claimed that his mentor at the time, Mr. Schoaf, had introduced him to the concept of why you do what you do. And he just kept saying this word. He's like, you need reasons, you need reasons. And I took that message, I expanded on it and kind of modernized it a bit for my demographic of rich people trying to get richer. And I found that it was one of the number one ways to kind of activate somebody after they hit a plateau. Motivational drivers are dynamic. They're not constants. The things that made you want to get richer when you were poor are very different than the things that'll make you want to get much richer when you're already rich. And even after you get, it could be materialistic things. It could be things that are empathetical, like charitable contributions or philanthropic drivers. It could also just be some stuff that, kind of pisses you off. I talk about this in the context of maybe you see somebody out there that is much bigger than you and you think they're an actual idiot. There's probably somebody here watching this right now that thinks this Jeremy Haynes guy's a fucking moron, but I'm way richer than them, and that probably pisses them off.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, they can tap into even just that emotion. A good one for me, not in the context of money, in the context of getting fitter. I had just the only thing that people who hate on me really have over me is they just get to pick at me and be like, oh, you're a little fat.
I saw some dickhead on Twitter last night.
I don't care about that at all. You got to also realize, like, when you operate at scale, like, stadium effect is real, where like naturally, half the country has to hate you to be the president.
Yep.
So you should technically thrive on the fact that you're going to have people out there that'll hate you. And believe it or not, hate usually gets some great reach for you, and it activates and brings in new followers that you otherwise wouldn't have. So I was real, and you can play around with them because none of it actually matters. But anyway, back to my point. You get to this point where you realize, like, I got to have something that actually makes me do things, risk and take a high level of action consistently and continue to sacrifice. Because once you get rich enough and you can take care of your short-term self, that's where most rich people kind of start to stall out. This is usually the 100 to 300K a month guys hit that stall point consistently, where, when I say they take care of their current self, and they're selfish for doing so, they can like go buy food without having to think about the price. They probably got like maids now, and like, maybe they're flying on like the tiny little PJs, like light jets, or they're flexing like domestic first class and shit like that. They can go to a nice store and like buy some clothes. They're not investing shit. They don't in any way, shape, or form help anybody else besides the people who can selfishly benefit them around them. It's a very tight, small circle. And again, they're not putting any money away for their future self. So they're not even considering them in the future. They're selfishly benefiting themselves now. Then you look at the guys who are a little bit above that, like 300 to 750. Those guys start reaching what we call self-actualization, right? And those people start to recognize, like, I want to bring more potential out of myself. And they start to have a little bit of that taste for the next driver that's really going to activate them and push them up to the next level. The $1 million a month plus guys, they're tapped into a wild set of reasons. Like, they have so many different things that kind of like attack them and make them feel small. And it's just everywhere for them. It's a constant, And the result of this difference in mindset is a difference in substantial revenue when backed by an aggressive action, the right offers, obviously the right business components to it. But I'm telling you, from what I've seen, without virtue signaling about it and just recognizing like how important money truly is and that it's in every decision you possibly make, and then tapping into specific reasons that are also aligned to the fact that you need money to take action on those and solve your circumstances, fucking powerhouse motivator to get people to actually do stuff,
So I deal a lot with a lot of agents in that realm where it's like, so normally they take about 2.5% to 3%.
Okay.
And they'll say to themselves, if I just sold, $12 million, $10 million a year, I'd be happy. I'd be good. That's only about $250,000. Okay. And I say to that, like, cool. At that point in time, you're probably okay. But that's also the problem, is that you become okay, and then to your point, they start stalling out. How do you break them out of that mindset? Because clearly, in your case, even with your like inner circle, right? You're tapping into guys where it's like, man, I was making $300,000, and you're like, snap out of it. Why aren't you making $1 million and things like that? I think I don't know if it's with you. Like I said, like when I watched your videos, it was, finally someone's calling me out the way that I want to be called out. So I appreciate it. But what is it exactly that?
I mean, just do the math. I mean, look at the retirement math alone is a great example of this. Our U.S. government here, they have a website, sec.gov. You can go look on that site for investor tools, and they have a specific calculator on that site. This is on investor.gov, to be clear. It's, again, an SEC website. Moral of the story, you look at the compound interest calculator and you just do some basic math. You're like, you have a monthly contribution that you can add in. You have an initial contribution you can add in. You had an annualized amount that you're going to generate off of that money that you're consistently investing, and you put a time threshold in there. You also have an interest rate variance that you can put into. And what you start to see is how much money you get to accumulate over whatever duration of time you put into it with whatever monthly contributions you want to invest. Now, there's this rule in finance called the 4% rule. This is taught by, classic finance people. They say that whatever that lump sum is that you see there in that bottom number, that it quantifies out for you, your equity balance in this case, assuming you're investing in things like the S&P, you would take 4% of that and sell it on an annualized basis. Wow. So I'll give you some basic math as an example for my retirement math. I saw that if I invested $200K a month, so if I took $200K up front and I took $200K every month, and I did that over the course of 20 years, and then I looked up, I was like, well, what's the S&P 500? Because that's what I've always heard guys like Warren Buffett, like all these other finance people talk about, like, what's that average and an annualized return of? It's about 10%. Technically, it's a little less or a little more, give or take the year, but about 10% was a safe number to plug in there. And I was like, all right, what age do I want to consider not having to work for active income anymore? And that age for me was around 45. I was 24 when I started doing this specific math. I'm 31 while I sit here now and film this. And long story short, I had realized, like, okay, 20 years would be the time horizon that I need to invest $200,000 a month. That's $2.4 million a year to have to invest. And on top of that, here's the other math that most people don't do just for being able to flesh it out entirely. How much does it cost in taxes, depending on where you live, to be able to even invest that amount? Because if you look at, as an example, just the highest tax threshold in a non-state tax like Florida state, it costs about $80K a month to invest $200K a month if I'm getting absolutely face fucked on taxes at the highest tax bracket. Technically, you can get away with paying a little less than that, to be fair. But again, that's the most conservative math you could technically do. So you technically have to say it'd take $280 a month just to invest $200 a month. And you'd have to sustain that over the course of 20 fucking years. Now, here's what that math turns into, just for clarity. Over that period of time of 20 years, it turns into about 135 or like $138 million. Okay. Now, if you take that and you multiply that times 4%, that's the amount minus your long-term capital gains taxes of 20%, divided by 12 that you would get to live on per month. That number might look sweet, but then you also got to factor in the erosion of our dollar losing value over that same period of time. So you also then factor that into the equation, and you're like, okay, so in today's dollars, that's the amount of money that I would get to live on per month after taxes, after the erosion of the value of the dollar in 20 years from now at age 45. And I saw that number and I was like, that's a couple $100,000 a month. So it's like right now, as an example, doing way more than that and living the lifestyle that I do, I figured, well, I would need at least that. That was very clear to me. And just in that one reason alone of just doing basic retirement math like that on investor.gov with the compound interest calculator, you can put it in perspective immediately for how much more money you likely need to be able to comfortably do something like that. Another great thing is taxes. It's like, as I've made a fuckload more money, like I've just last year in estimated taxes per month was paying about $115K a month in estimated taxes. Now, very important to note that in itself, a little over 1.3-ish million a year, that had conditioned me to be so much more comfortable with like larger monthly expenses. It minimized things like 20 or 50K a month payroll positions. It made like my top sales guy some months hits upwards like 130K a month now. These things condition you upward too. So besides the fact that, as you make more, you also pay more in things like taxes. You'll pay more in payroll. You'll have like additional expenses you might not consider yet. You'll also, and this is again very important, condition up. Okay. Now, when you look at that and you ask like this concept back to your question of these guys are kind of stalling out and they're just okay, the very first thing that has to be addressed is the fact that they're the farthest thing from okay. They're not even remotely close to okay. They just have the illusion of being okay because they're stuck in that I can take care of my selfish current self. That's all that technically exists right now.
That's all they're looking at in that moment.
Well, that's all that's technically real to the smallest thinkers out there is just right here, right now. That's it. So as soon as you realize, you're like, well, dude, you think you're going to be alive in 20 years from now? Like you think your earning window is going to be, you think you're going to be as capable now and then, and you think it's equal? Like you think you'll earn more then? You think you'll earn less than? You think you'll want to work more? You think, will you have kids around then? You think you'll have more time? You think you'll be more capable? It's like there's all kinds of questions. Will the market in your world, you could ask them like, is the market going to change? Is it going to be more favorable, less favorable? Like, how do you think that looks? And anyway, back to my point. The main reason that you have to like wake somebody up is because on the other side of that is where the aggressive action lays again. That's what got him to the point of being okay in the first place, was feeling unokay. You understand? So that is a strategic way to think. You can still be extremely grateful for your current circumstances. You can still feel awesome about what you've managed to accomplish and live in gratitude and, not necessarily be unhappy or unsettled, but you can also strategically tell yourself, like, I've got a long way to go. I've got a lot more I've got to accomplish. I've got a lot more I've got to do. And that's what's required of us as human beings. We're not robots. We can generate an emotional state from that uncomfortability that we make ourselves aware of, and then we can leverage that emotional state into an aggressive level of action. That's typically where it starts. Other reasons are they just fail to sacrifice on an ongoing basis. Their lives become so comfortable, and therefore they become so complacent, or additional responsibility comes to fruition. That's the other big thing. You as you age, in most instances, start dragging this massive fucking anchor behind you, wrapped around your feet, and that anchor is responsibility. You feel like you can risk less because you have more responsibility. When in reality, if you earned more, you'd be able to risk more comfortably. And risking more is always what makes you, in almost all instances, richer. Or in some instances, obviously, if the risk goes south, they wipe you out. But that's what they're afraid of. They don't have enough risk capital either to really go out there and like do more. And that in itself should make you want to earn more, because if you can't take more risks, you're only going to be able to take care of your current self. These are all just like little strategic mindset things that somebody could do to reframe their current circumstances.
It's like, I've always been a believer of like stretch yourself into the next phase, into the next level, whether that is your lifestyle. You mentioned payroll. Like this past year, we ended up taking on this building we're in Virginia. So we ended up taking on this 2-floor building. I'm like, okay, that's another thing.
Have you ever been to Wintergreen?
No, I haven't.
Wintergreen's a little ski resort town up there, if you want to call it a ski resort in Virginia. It's in the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Maybe, yeah.
It's beautiful.
I'll check it out for sure, man. And, as I looked at this, I said, okay, cool. We're going to need somebody to manage this place. So that's like taking on the overhead of payroll and things like that. And funny enough, to your point, as you were mentioning all of those things, is it typically 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, it always ends up being okay. It turns out that you can actually manage and you can handle the responsibility.
You're essentially stretching yourself. What you're doing in your current motivational driver is you're giving yourself the feeling of your back being against the wall, which is to a degree a very unhealthy place to operate from. You have to feel like you are pressed to be able to perform in order to perform. And so that'll erode you as time goes on, because if you continue to put yourself into that situation, that mental complex will come to be a huge disadvantage to you as time continues to pass, because you'll consistently risk almost everything to a degree in order to leg up. Whereas what you strategically want to be able to like change your frame to is, I can still be in incredible circumstances and earn the next risk capital that I'm going to put towards something else, and technically still be extremely comfortable with wherever your expenses are.
I feel like that's coming from a place of like understanding your own relationship with money and time.
Well, it's being self-aware for sure. Yeah, being self-aware is a huge part of this whole process. But at the end of the day, like that's a huge, almost like state that most people consistently find themselves in. These are the people who like build something up, and then they have to a degree, like sabotage it or tear it down in order to achieve again. And that feeling becomes the only place that they know their highest productivity exists. And again, it's because of the failure to swap out that motivational driver for another one. They never found different reasons. So not even everybody that does that is self-aware, which is the scariest part of the whole thing.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Those people risk a lot.
Was Jeremy always like this?
Oh, no. I mean, look, there's a tremendous amount, just like any great person in life, there's a tremendous amount of pain and lessons and reflection and, great wins and great losses that I've endured over the course of a little more than a decade of my career now. And those lessons I've been very transparent about. I try not to hide anything. I try to be as, open as I can. And my version of like philanthropy on earth, we do like actual philanthropy, to be clear. Like we just did a charitable toy drive here at the office the other day. We'll do like school supplies and a few things. And we do some Get Richer talks for underprivileged communities too, with giving out some of our courses. But my version of like my philanthropy, besides that, is trying to help rich people get richer. I think rich people are some of the most important people on earth. I feel like we can actualize and materialize on better circumstances for people in the shortest duration of time possible. So as time has gone on, I've just recognized the importance of that. And as I've said at the start this whole thing, I recognize nobody was out there stewarding this message. Nobody out there really advocates for rich people. Everybody's gotten beat down by the masses, and nobody really stands up against it all and just says, you guys are fucking crazy trying to criticize billionaires You guys are crazy trying to criticize millionaires. You guys are crazy. There's like this whole half of the earth now that's just like, oh, rich people are the devil. You know, rich people are evil. And it's the exact opposite. Rich people are the literal nicest people I've ever known. Rich people are some of the most helpful people I've ever known. Rich people are capable of actually helping other people at a level of scale by themselves because of the pure resources that they have to throw at things in a given moment. It's so important to note, like there's just, you know, nobody out there that I think stewards that message. And that's exactly what I'm here to do. I consider it my mission, you know, so I wasn't born this way. I didn't like pop out the womb this way. Just through time and experience and reflection and literally just helping them and seeing what they do after we help them get richer. It's been, you know, one of the most important things I think I've stepped into.
What was that time when you looked at rich people as a whole and you said, that's who I want to service? Because it's a lot of it comes from, so for me, when I chose to work within the real estate industry, for example, it was, I wanted to start a marketing agency. I didn't know who I was going to pick to work with. I just knew I had this set of skills that I had acquired over a period of time. I said, I'm going to be helping out some people. And then my mom went through her divorce and I said, oh, I should probably work with realtors or loan officers because it wasn't even just about the money at that point in time. I kind of had a different reason and or mission to like see how we support that, right? And that kind of led me to a certain degree to some of the success I may have seen early on and like some of what I've received so far, right? And now I'm at a place where even like business coaches and people like that, they're like, oh no, you need to like serve other people that are doing way bigger things. And in my head, initially, this was last year, it was like, well, these are my people, right? But money is everywhere and everybody is in need. And to some degree, like everybody can be supported and helped. And then you chose, for example, like just rich people. And I think you work with not just marketing agencies, or I don't know what that looks like for you.
We help anybody that's got some kind of high ticket product or service that's looking to scale it up. We used to be niche specific. So when I very first started, this was when I was about 20 years old, we had helped just personal brands. And that was exclusively a decision made because of my experience prior to that. The past job I had was with a billionaire. He's a sales trainer, now kind of a real estate guy. And I helped him. That guy specifically being a big personal brand, I felt like that experience would just transfer into our marketing agency. And that's initially what we stepped into. We turned down a lot of opportunities because of the same mindset that you're just referring to here. As time went on, we recognized that our skills were transferable and we gave ourselves the permission to transfer those skills to other niches that needed our help. So we'd occasionally have opportunities that would come our way that we would take advantage of. And as I said, realize through action that transferred well. But in addition to that, it was more so just the idea that, as I mentioned, with what you can do to limit your impact to only one niche is kind of silly in my opinion, when what you can teach and what you can talk about is transferable to more than that. Because you got to understand how the ripple effect works. The ripple effect is quite profound. There's very few people that realize what they do impacts so much more than just the direct person that they're helping. So in the personal branding space, it brought me to awareness that every person that we would typically sell to through our clients would go out there and have some kind of like life transformation or life change or some type of outcome from new awareness. And that person's life being better would then result in everybody that they interacted's lives being like, imagine you help a guy get richer. He goes and tips a valet guy $500 or a waiter $1,000 or, you know, some random shit like that. Or they can even just go and buy more stuff. So they impact their local community and their local economies 1,000%. At a greater scale, or they become empowered to go and just write a book, you know, do something else. The ripple effect is profound. So then we recognize like, oh man, some of these opportunities that we're turning down, like they're for crazy helpful things. Like we have a guy right now, he sells hyperbaric chambers. Hyperbaric chambers have all kinds of medical claims that are technically not necessarily proven out. But man, I mean, those testimonials that come in sure seem to help the fuck out of those people who buy that product. Red light panels, same kind of concept. Could be as simple as supplements. We've had guys that help people cut out alcohol. Those are insane. Like we had a testimonial from a guy through that client's offer. This was the application of the guy before he got his help. He had said that he was a surgeon, that he was drunk at the operating table, that he had cut somebody open, and he had gotten removed from the operating room. Thankfully, that person that he cut didn't die, and they were able to help him. And this guy was initially coming to this specific company because his entire career was threatened. In the application, the most audacious thing about the whole situation was the guy had said that his lifestyle was threatened. Is one of the things that he was self-aware of as a result of his career being on the line. And that guy went through a 90-day program with over a 90+% success rate. And that's backed, by the way, by a study out of a university. Moral of the story, this guy got the help he needed. He was able to go back in front of the medical board, attest to the fact that he was like alcohol free at this point, was going to stay that way. And this guy was a great surgeon for decades, that had just crumpled down to being a victim of alcoholism. Moral of the story is like helping clients like that, like literally will save people's lives. And that example of getting that guy back on track 100%. From the surgery he's able to help produce. We wouldn't have helped a company like that if we were just niche specific. So you can look at it from that perspective. You can also just look at it from a monetary perspective, like helping more people typically allows you to open up your markets more and have therefore more people you can sell to and more money to be made. We just like it too. Over time, you'll appreciate a good challenge, There's plenty of different offers and niches and, business types. We even took our skills recently to the raising capital niche, where we had a client that gave us an opportunity to help them with a pre-seed investment that crushed. We helped them with like $8 million raised. We then took that skill set and we helped companies like there was an RIA out of Los Angeles, specifically Santa Monica, that managed like $23 billion in AUM. Their minimum was $1 million to invest. Max was like obviously hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. Dude, we've had guys that we've helped sell these RV boat and storage facility investments.
Yeah.
They had a guy who sold a company to Barclays for like $1 billion something, like this black card credit card company that Barclays bought, came through a fucking lead form that we ran for that company on Facebook.
Oh my goodness.
Like, yeah, we've had all kinds of crazy stuff. So our skills simply put are transferable. And usually when you are willing to, kind of venture out of whatever you're comfortable with and step into one of those other opportunities, you obviously just open yourself up to more opportunity yourself.
What would you say to the person that, this isn't me because I get a shit ton of ROAS from just Facebook ads, and you're probably going to tell me to spend more. Like I know that much. But what would you say to the person that says that social media leads suck?
I mean, that's silly, yeah. At the end of the day, a lot of people are terrible at sales. So it's very important to note, depending on like where that person's context is and how they're determining that, most of the time that frame that they hold is from comparison bias. So as an example, if you generate an organic lead and the organic lead consumes an abundant amount of content, like as an example, you said you watch 5 months of content from me?
A lot.
Who knows how many videos that actually is? Is that a time frame or is that just like...
I haven't watched your migraine vlog videos recently.
Nice. So long story short, it's like, think about this. That's 5 full months of like, these are 20-minute to like hour plus long videos that you're sitting here talking about. Who knows at the threshold in which you watched each one of these. But the point is, like, by the time you get to the point where you're ready to convert on something, you're going to be a laydown deal. Comparatively, like when you run a paid ad, let's say that you come through one of my funnels on an organic channel, which is typically a call funnel. I might then get the illusion as the organic person in that example that says, oh, well, I'm running a call funnel organically, therefore that should just work when I roll it over to paid advertising. But it's completely different because, like I said, there's a lot of content that gets consumed prior to the call occurring.
Yep.
Paid ads is the opposite. The call will occur first. And you'll naturally get a much colder, less educated lead who consume no content that has an unknown level of interest on the interest spectrum that you've then got to actively work to the point of increasing the interest to get a conversion to occur. Most people don't understand content first ad strategies where you can technically replicate the organic sales process via paid ads. What I teach a lot on my YouTube channel is what we call back-end selling systems, which is where you can run that same call funnel. You can put a fuckload of content in a short duration of time. Have you ever heard of concentrated coffee?
Yes.
Have you ever seen one of those bottles in a grocery store where it's like a bottle like this big? I've usually seen like concentrated cold brew. Yep. And they tell you that all you're supposed to do with that bottle is take a cap of what's in that bottle, pour it into a glass like this, and then fill the rest of the glass with water. You've seen those? Mm-hmm. See, the thing is, when you replicate the organic sales process via paid ads, the illusion of doing it would be that you can put the same amount of 5 months worth of content in front of somebody in 2 to 3 days on average before their sales call occurs. That's not going to happen. What you have to learn to do is you have to learn to concentrate a message. It's like, just as we as human beings have learned to take just a standard cup of coffee and give it to you, we've also learned how to concentrate coffee to where all you need is a cap full of it to have the same effect as a cup.
So let me ask you this. So in the Jeremy Haynes world, the message that you've learned to concentrate is to get richer.
Well, there's plenty more than that. I mean, again, the skill set of...
That's the one that spoke to me. I mean,
and that's great. But again, that's over 5 months. So if you would have originated from a paid ad in comparison, the ability and skill of what I'd have to do is completely different right after you book a call through a paid ad. I'd have to take the concept of what you had consumed and think about what it took to get you to have a resonance with that message? Was it, as an example, like a stage talk that I did? Was it a 20-minute video? How could I take all that and compress it down to a single sentence, as an example, to get the same effect? Or how could I get that down into a 1-minute video or a 2-minute video? How could I ensure that the consumption actually occurs as well? Will it occur on the confirmation page? Will it occur via email? Will it occur back in the news feed through a Hammer Them campaign? Will it occur from a setter reaching out to you prior to the call and trying to get you to consume a specific video? There's all kinds of, across the board, little moments that matter. Because at the end of the day, for your self-awareness, it's not just the get richer messaging that you resonated with. You also mentioned at some point here that you'd gotten some level of result from show rate with my Hammer Them strategy.
100%.
There's probably a few other key moments before you made the determining decision in your head where you said, this guy knows what the fuck he's talking about. Like, this guy's good.
It was,
you got to stack all of those after you get conversion
stacked
to
message.
sales call.
It was kind of like that component was the hook. And like I told you earlier, I felt like you called me out in that sense. And that's to the degree that I carry myself. It's like, just call it like it is. And, you know, it's not even about hurting feelings. It's about doing the job that we're meant to do. And that's what the feeling was, which then got me to pay attention. And funny enough, you confirmed everything that, like, in my bias in that moment,
right,
most definitely happened. That's really
That's
cool.
a skill. That's a skill that most people lack. So when they say something like, hey, paid leads kind of suck, what they're really saying is I'm failing to successfully concentrate a message that I'm able to convert somebody on organically in my paid advertising process. So every lead that I deal with is coming through poorly framed, very unaware, not ready to buy yet. My sales cycles are therefore too long, and I'm not able to front enough cash and sustain it to be able to endure that sales cycle that my paid ads are currently providing for me. And so they have to adapt. That's the main difference between somebody that has that frame and somebody who absolutely loves paid advertising. They got to master all the key components of running paid ads, like messaging. We had a guy just this morning in my Inner Circle group chat. His name's Sam. He's been in there for a long time. Sam actually originated from that deal I was telling you about with the RIA out in Santa Monica. He used to work for them, and he started an agency later on and joined the Inner Circle. He said that he had gotten his show rate up from 40% to 70% using pain-based messaging, which was a recent weekly Inner Circle group call that we had done for those guys. We taught them through a bunch of incredible examples, clients of ours, people that we found out in the wild that were essentially taking people to what's called the pit, like a place where they hear something out loud for the first time that's only been in their head that resonates with them deeply, that takes them to a place of pain where they say, my God, I mean, this person actually understands what I'm dealing with over here. And they're so much more receptive when people genuinely feel understood, their problems, their circumstances, their desired outcomes, and more importantly, that pain complex they experience. That got a show rate up 30% from 40 to 70% just with pain-based messaging, nothing else. Messaging can sometimes make the difference. In other instances, it's back-end selling systems. In other instances, it's adding a specific change to how AI and all these different LLMs are framing your business in the mind of a buyer. We had a guy, he's a client of ours. He sells something for $17,000 and $26,000. If you asked, what is this company's product cost in Google's AI search overview found a podcast from like a fucking decade ago from the guy about a product he's not even referring to in this question being typed into Google. And Google's AI search overview says, oh, this product probably costs like $5 to $7K. And then a prospect shows up on the phone and they're like, costs 17 to 26K, like, you know, and then you get an anchor bias playing against you. Sometimes it's just as simple as that for what can make the difference. Point I'm trying to make, there's a lot of stuff that these people that bitch about paid leads are just completely uneducated about. And it's like, as an example, if you go commit a traffic infraction, if you speed 100 miles an hour down the road and you're oblivious to speed limits and you get pulled over here in Florida, if you go above 100 miles an hour now, it's a felony. You go straight to jail. You risk 30 days in jail if you go above 100 miles an hour now. So as an example of that, if you're oblivious to that law and you go above 100 and you get pulled over and you get pulled out of your car and arrested, doesn't matter that you were oblivious to the law. The law exists.
The law is the
You know,
law.
it's like just because you fucking suck at paid ads doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden just going to get blessed with great leads and great opportunities.
100%.
It has nothing to do with it. It's like the laws of the game exist. And if you want to be negligent to those laws, you want to act like they're not real, so be it. You're just going to have dog shit results and your competitors are going to sweep you. You know what I mean? You got to be educated as a business owner nowadays. You no longer get this, point your finger at blame. Too many niches for all types of businesses have experienced, 4 to 5 agencies per business that have quote unquote fucked them before they all came to the self-awareness at the same time. I have no idea what I'm doing. I, as the business owner, need to educate myself on what is actually possible.
We spend a lot of
people I
time
work
doing
with,
that.
I can hold them accountable. You know what I mean?
So whenever we get a new client coming in right out of the gate, is we take a look at the ways in which they're generating leads so that we can do more of that and get them quicker wins. Then we go ahead and start generating leads for them through like paid ads, Google, Facebook, and everything in between. We build their nurturing systems. And at that point in time, it's like, cool, we'll go ahead and start this process of like generating some content for you.
Of course.
So when we knock your lead generation, your follow-up, and your content or your brand, like the affiliate brand with content, a different conversation. But when we knock all of those three things out, what I look at my clients and say is, how good are you at sales? Because at that point in time, I think that's a skill set to develop.
Oh, yeah.
And it's one that's definitely going to show you, like, it's like, here's the mirror and tell me. And I typically go with, if I generate you, 180 leads in the next 90 days, can I count on you to at least close 9, which is 5%?
Yeah.
Everybody is like, yes. Until you put the leads in front of them, and it's like you get punched in the face a little bit.
Yeah, it's so true. Most people just take random actions nowadays instead of taking actions that their sales team can actually close deals from. We have people all the time where, if you look at as an example at the organic businesses again, all their leads are closing from people who are consuming a lot of content. Those types of businesses then try a call funnel via paid ads. It doesn't make much sense. Yeah. What would make a lot more sense is getting good at webinars, because webinars are an example of that concentrated messaging that can occur within an hour or 2 hours, depending on the length of the webinar. And then you tee up a call on their closers' calendars. There's a dramatically higher probability to close those types of leads and successfully transition into paid by doing so. Not everybody understands exactly what you just said, which is you have to do things relative to where your sales skills are. If you just do a random set of marketing actions and don't consider the sales team's skill set and where they're currently at, you're absolutely cooked straight from the beginning. You're stacking the odds against you right away if you do random things like that.
That is so true. Talking about webinars, I have 24 webinars this year.
Nice, man.
We're already running ads for February launch.
Cold audiences or warm audiences?
We're going at both.
Nice.
So we're going cold audiences is going to be 6 p.m.s, and then warm audiences are going to be 11 a.m. Just from like the people that we already kind of have.
And you're only doing 2 a month?
We're doing 2 a month right now.
So one's cold and one's warm?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah, you should increase the cold frequency much more. Cold, because it's a broader market of people who don't know you, means you could do it at a higher frequency. You can typically do a weekly cold audience webinar, and you can typically do a once-a-month warm audience webinar, assuming that your warm audience isn't growing dramatically. There are a handful of examples of people out there that grow their businesses in terms of their overall social presence and awareness very rapidly. So when they do a warm audience at a higher frequency than once a month, their extraction rate is still lower than their overall audience replenishing rate is because of how fast their audience grows. When that's the case, you can increase the frequency of warm. When that's not the case, once a month, it's only 12 times a year. We actually did this math earlier today. 12 divided by 365 is 3.2%. So only 3.2% of the year. It's not a lot if you do it once a month. You're promoting a warm audience webinar to your total social presence, your email list, things like that, your warm audience remarketing ads that you choose to do. But cold, true cold, by the way, like you exclude all the warm audiences from the cold so you don't stat pad. We like to have this good quote, a little bit raunchy to be clear, so plug your ears if you don't want to hear it. But when you mix cold and warm together, your stat padding. Okay. What you're doing is kind of like measuring your dick length from your ass. It's not the real length, and you know it. You know what I mean? Yep. The real length is exclusively determined when you exclude all the warm from the cold. That's when you see your true skill set in the stats. And that's where real improvement is. When you go out there and you run these cold audience webinars and you exclude all cold, you play video games.
Yes.
Imagine cranking the difficulty up to like extreme difficulty. That's kind of like what cold audience webinars would be. Then when you go to your warm audience, you're going to crank the difficulty down. If you mix the two together, you're never actually going to see that your cold audience requires a completely different set of messaging or a completely different webinar presentation or even just a completely different set of like pre-webinar emails. The reminder sequences may be different. 100%. When you separate them out completely, the stats, the raw stats for it are going to reveal themselves to what you need to do for changes. And I'm telling you now, there are a completely different set of best practices between the two that you'd also want to implement. The only time that you can typically mix the two and get away with it is when you just don't have a lot of cash to risk on just a raw cold audience webinar, and you're also already aware that you're going to kind of suck at cold audience webinars. If that's the case and you need to accumulate a little bit of cash but still kind of expose yourself to cold, you can mix the two together.
Would you go directly on a cold audience, like direct to offer, or would you then do it to warm them up?
No. So with a cold audience webinar, I mean, what's the price of the product in this hypothetical example?
So I'll give you like the one that I'm considering right now, 18,000 a year.
Yeah, and so $18K a year.
So
I mean,
that's
are you
about
paying it monthly, or are they paying it PIFF, or what?
If they pay PIFF, they get a discount. If not, they go monthly. And one of the pages that I took out from, I don't know whether you love him or hate him, doesn't matter, but like when Hormozy did his launch,
Love Hormozy,
yeah. So when he did his launch, he extended the timeline of payment to 24 months.
Uh-huh.
And so I started doing that as well, because it's like, oh, that's money that's going to keep coming in no matter what anyways.
Okay.
And so I entertained that idea of like, well, it's 18K. You can go up to like 24K if you pay over 24 months.
Yeah, got it.
And things.
Well, I mean, to be clear, it's like it depends on your skill set in the webinar itself, because at that price point, if you're just doing it monthly, you can technically do a direct to checkout and save some money. I would encourage, though, that you push to a call. That way you have an increased probability that you're going to get more PIFs. The PIFs will get you a higher ROAS. So it's very important to note that the more return that you're able to generate off of the dollars that you risk in a tight time frame, the more dollars you can risk the next event to go bigger. And that's where most people stay small. They, as an example, might close, let's say you close 20 people, but you spent 20K and each person only gave you an AOV of $1,000 in your example. Mm-hmm. You broke even on the first month's webinar. And then if you want to scale, you're technically fronting cash, right? That kind of sucks. Comparatively, let's give the example that you pitched the PIFF discount through booking a call, and then on the call bookings and for the post-webinar follow-up, you did a pop-up event where you said, hey, everybody who's left unclosed, we'll give you the option to do a payment plan, and you pitch the payment plan after you hard pitch the PIFF discount and doing a push to a call. You'd naturally collect far more dollars. If 2 people, as an example, piffed at 15K up front, you risked 20K, and then you had 10 people that did your $1,000 AOV, you'd be in a much better cash position to be able to sacrifice some of that return on ad spend towards the cost of growth and scaling into that next webinar. Scaling is what you really want to prioritize more so than almost anything else, because that's when you can make far more money, obviously, than if you could have a fucking 20-to-1 ROAS spending $1,000. It doesn't mean shit. I'd rather have a 2-to-1 ROAS spending $500,000 in that example, because I'm going to make a lot more money than you. So most people, they kind of test their way into poverty, and they don't have the ability to just mathematically pull out a certain cost of scaling the next webinar in this case.
Yeah.
So they stay small. Always do the math on how much you need to be able to punch the next one higher based on what you're going to generate off that current one. And that can help with some of the decision-making that you're considering, like whether you do direct to checkout, whether you book a call, whether you're going to pitch the PIFF, or whether you're going to pitch the payment plan straight away.
That's awesome.
Even in that example you talked about with Hormozy, it's very important to consider Hormozy in that launch you're talking about is operating at such an extreme scale that he can do what's called an onion pitch, which is where he can say, hey, buy this. Okay, you can buy it this way. You can also buy it this way. Like, there's so many different subsets of the audience within that same pool of people sitting there watching that if he only pitches it one way, like what most people do, he's going to lose a tremendous demographic of people. We encourage the onion pitch even when you're small, right? Pitch what you want first and what you want people to ideally do. Repitch it, right? After going through some objection handling and risk reversals, then you can start to peel back and you can say, you can also buy it this way. You can buy it through funding. We do an in-house payment plan. We have this drop sell. Like, that's essentially what you saw in that massive launch, to be clear. And that makes a ton of sense in that context.
That's so cool, man. And I know that, time is running up short. Somebody in the world of business, again, like, you've given me so much game just right here for my own business. And I know that other companies like mine are going to benefit off of that too. Somebody just in the world of business wants to become a world-class marketer, like yourself. There's very few people that I believe see marketing as an art, and you're definitely one of them. So I have in my sphere, or the people that I consider as, I have Dean Jackson, love Dean Jackson, Sabri Subi, there's you, and there's Hormozy. And, and I've only been in, consuming your stuff the last 6 months. So I can only imagine how much more I can go ahead and learn. But if somebody were to take marketing very seriously for their business, and you had 60 seconds or so to explain it to them and best way to get the most out of it, what would you tell them?
Well, first of all, I got here through spending a fuckload of money. like a lot, you know. I always compare the perspective to like one of these skyscrapers down here in Miami. It's like I can tell you about stuff from like the 90th floor view because I'm standing on the 90th floor of the amount I've spent to get that view. When you very first come into the game, like, you know, you're going to stand on the first floor, and I can describe what the 90th floor looks like to you, but that's all you're really going to understand about it is you're going to understand the perspective I can articulate. You really got to just spend a fuckload of cash to be able to inevitably carry that perspective yourself and see it for yourself. There's no other way to get up the elevator besides just standing on more money that you've spent and reflecting on those lessons to get there. And obviously the view from down there is completely different from the view up top. It's also important to note that as a person who helps thousands of people and, you know, intimately helps hundreds of rich people trying to get a fuckload richer across many different niches, I also get additional perspective beyond my own money spent because of how intimately involved I am in many other people's businesses. So the amount of consistent, accumulated, compounded experience that by the day I continue to accumulate and take action on and reflect on in terms of lessons and then use to improve our circumstances and results we generate for business, I mean, it's substantial, you know, and it's been that way for a long time, over 10 years now. So as a result of that, and it's obviously going to continue too, the best thing I'd tell you is, you know, just go out there and actually take action. You're going to obviously learn the most through taking an action. As you take action, you're going to recognize that you have clear constraints. And if you treat yourself like a computer where you recognize I've got a tremendous amount of awareness that I lack, right? The CIA director back when 9/11 happened in the early 2000s, he was questioned on how the fuck that occurred. He was like, on the world that this happened is what a journalist asked him. How did we not know? And the CIA director, he had said, look, in life, there's known knowns. There's things that we know we know. There's known unknowns, things that we know that we have no idea about. And then there's unknown unknowns, the things that we don't even know that we don't know. When you go out there and you do things like what you're doing and just pursue new knowledge and new information, whether it be through YouTube, whether it be through some other social channel, investing into somebody's offers, which is generally where the more serious and high level and actionable information is, in most instances, also better organized. You get the opportunity to increase your awareness, which then gives you the opportunity to take action on things that you're literally not aware of right now. You can only choose to do things relative to what you're aware you're capable of doing. Mm-hmm. You can't think with things that you're oblivious to. You can't think with things that you don't know. So paying or just seeking out new information and new insights gives you the opportunity to literally think and unlock new ideas and new opportunities for yourself that you otherwise wouldn't previously do. A great example of this, like imagine somebody standing right in front of a wall that's only 5 feet wide and they can just go around both sides, but they're so close to the wall that they don't even realize that they can just take a few steps to the left without even having to turn their head, or a few steps to the right without even having to turn their head, and the wall would be gone and they'd be able to continue walking forward. That's what most people's problems are like. They're so close to it that they need somebody else to come in and just tell them, look, it's really this simple to get around it, you know, because somebody else sees it from the third person perspective and is like, what is this guy doing? Why is he doing it? In other instances, it's a very complex problem and somebody's in a deep maze. Ever seen that one what's that one Harry Potter movie where they're like fighting for that cup and they go into that crazy fucking maze with the demon dogs and like all those crazy creatures? And like, dude, sometimes your problems are going to feel like that. Like you're like really up against some major shit that's absolutely cooking you. Mm-hmm. And in those situations, it's like, just like in that movie, having a friend to be able to fight alongside of you and help you through that process who's already been through the maze several times, or at least whether they've been through the maze or not, is equipped with some more resources or more power or just more awareness than you to help you get out of it. Those are the situations that people find themselves in all the time. And if you, like I said, if you treat yourself like a computer and you just need a simple software update, that's what new information does. It gives you the opportunity to operate from a completely different place, a refreshed worldview, new ideas, new opportunities. It unlocks the next level of yourself. So yeah, just pursue it. But at the same time, action's going to ultimately accumulate the most experience for you and like your circumstances specifically that you get to reflect on.
I love that. Thank you so much for doing this.
Of course,
honestly,
for having me on, Michael. Appreciate you being here.
What you see is what you get, and that's I really respect that. I see a lot of frontage. So really appreciate you. Really appreciate you sharing so much knowledge. I appreciate the introduction to Mr. Pratt.
Of course, man.
Fantastic. You guys can look him up. And
he's talking about Dr. George Pratt, my hypnotist out in La Jolla, California.
That man. What are your greatest wishes?
Yeah, right.
And then it's like, okay,
One trait or characteristic.
dude,
that's missing or holding
I
you
was
back.
out for 45 minutes and I woke up as happy and jolly as I can be. And for whatever reason, I'm like very locked in, but it's like, you got to drink the Kool-Aid. You got to take the action.
Yeah, man.
You know? Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, Doug. Good to meet you.